Dear friends, in this session, we continued about the study of Eisenstein. In the autumn of 1930, Eisenstein and his two assistants embarked upon a great project which ended in disastrous frustration for Eisenstein. As mentioned earlier, Eisenstein had become interested in Mexico as a result of designing the scenery and costumes for the play, The Mexican. Being so close to Mexico, Eisenstein became possessed by the idea of making a film in Mexico. Eisenstein became possessed by the idea of making film in Mexico. He had become friendly in his Hollywood with Charlie Chaplin, who now suggested to Eisenstein that the famous left-wing author upon Sinclair might help him find independent finance for a Mexican film. Sinclair, who was temperamentally a very unsuitable collaborator for a man of Eisenstein's merciful genius, induced his wife and some of his friends to invest money in a Mexican film to be made by Eisenstein. Though the two men hardly knew one another, with the financial backing of upfronts Sinclair, Eisenstein, Tisse and Alexandro set off for Mexico to direct and photograph the film, which came to be known as the Que Viva Mexico. And as detained never to be completed by Sergei Eisenstein. On arrival in Mexico, Eisenstein became intoxicated with the country. After 3 months, he evolved the concept of a monumental film of living history of Mexico to be portrayed through 4 stories framed by a prologue and epilogue. Upon Sinclair knowing virtually nothing about film production, claims that he could not understand the point of thousands of feet of film which Eisenstein sent to Hollywood to be developed. Eisenstein in Mexico came into violent conflict with Sinclair's brother-in-law, who was acting as business manager of the film unit. The brother-in-law antagonized Mexicans to such a point that they ordered him either to leave the country or to be deported. He left and returning to Hollywood, accused Eisenstein and his assistants of many things of which they were wholly innocent. Upon Sinclair suddenly halted the film before all the scenes were finished, Eisenstein, unable to arrange with Sinclair to come and edit his film, finally returned to the Soviet Union in the spring of 1932, believing that Sinclair would send the film to him to edit. But Sinclair never sent the film. He bargained with the Soviet governments, who would not pay the money he asked because it was more than what had actually been spent. Sinclair in due course handed the $230,000 feet of film to be commercial producer who edited the film Thunder over Mexico 1933, which used only one of the 4 stories and an impressionistic prologue and epilogue. Later in 1939 and 40, when all hope of getting the film which remained back till Eisenstein faded, I myself, rediscovering Eisenstein's footage, produced and edited the film Time in the Sun, which is, as it were, a skeleton of Eisenstein's original intention. From the spring of 1932 to the beginning of 1935, Eisenstein never directed a shoot of film. He taught some 7 75 students of cinematography, and he advised on the scripts for several young film units. He proved a teacher of genius. At the beginning of January 1935, a conference on cinematography was held on Moscow. Eisenstein was called upon to be the chairman. Person after person rose and criticized Eisenstein for his formalistic work, his theories, and the fact that he had made two films since 1929. Eisenstein was publicly humiliated for what was regarded as his divorcement from current life, and finally he was given an ultimatum to direct a film. In the early months of 1935, Eisenstein went to work once more on film Beskin Meadow, distant, never to be completed, finished, and to this day never seen, though perhaps somewhere the roughly edited film remains. Beskin Meadow was halted after many alterations, condemned, in fact banned, with a small-minded official leading an ideological crusade against Eisenstein, whose work had brought such a great honor to the Soviet Union. Eisenstein made what was called a recantation, admitting his errors of understanding. Having done so, he was given new assignment, the immensely successful historical film Alexander Nevsky, 1937 to 38. At last, Eisenstein completed his first sound film, although he had been the first film director to put forward as an artistic theory of what his sound film should be. No film could have been more different in character from his early work than Alexander Nevsky, which, using professional actors drawn from the theatre, is fashioned into a style of film which may be called a pageant opera. The film is remarkable as audio-visual collaboration between Eisenstein and Russia's noted composer Prokhorov. It is important sequence is that which has come to be known as the Battle on the Ice. Few films have ever included the shots more superbly composed or such an outstanding musical score. That is, the score was later translated into Kannada. But the subject of the film, the invention of the Teutonic Knights from Germany in the 13th century, was the direct use of film for political purpose. The Russians feared the rise of Hitler and Nazis, and this historical film showing the defeat of the ancient German knights was a warning to the modern German nationalists who began to threaten all of Europe. The film was a popular triumph, by far the most popular of Eisenstein's films so far as the Russian people was concerned. It won the Eisenstein the Order of Lenin, so long withheld from him. On 21st November 1940, Eisenstein's version of the opera, the Walküre, by the great German composer Wagner, opened at the Bolshoi Theatre, a production presumably in honor of Russo-German cultural relations. Within a little over 6 months, the Germans attacked Russia and once again Alexander Nevsky was shown. Now Eisenstein set about the preparation and execution of the last work of his career, the monumental film which he planned in three parts, three separate films to form a trilogy on the life of the extraordinary Tsar Ivan the Terrible, who had been the consolidator of United Russia in the 16th century. Eisenstein's scenario for this great though unfinished work reads like a prose poem which might have been penned by Milton, whom Eisenstein greatly admired. The first and second parts were directing during the war years in a studio in a distant Alma Ata. The first part being released in January 1945, part first of Ivan the Terrible is discussed further on. It was on the Stalin Prize First Class. When it was released abroad, its strange style amazed people. Many did not know what to say about it. Eisenstein, who had returned to Moscow from Alma Ata in autumn of 1944, continued the editing of Part 2 and completed this in February 1946. The night he completed the editing, he went to party to celebrate his winning of Stalin Prize. The midst of the celebration, he had a heart attack and was carried to the Kremlin hospital where he lay between life and death. After many months, it became known to Eisenstein that Ivan the Terrible Part 2 had been banned as anti-historical. Once again, Eisenstein wrote an admission of errors and he hoped to re-edit the film and complete the third part. But Eisenstein never recovered sufficiently to work again on any film. The last years of his life were spent in occasional lecturing to students and to a vast amount of research. On the 19th February 1948, while he was working on a manuscript entitled The Theory of Color Films, he got up to answer a knock of his door. It was one of his oldest friends, Maxim Staruk, who had known him as a boy in Riga and worked with him in the Holocaust Theatre and on strike. But Einstein never reached the door, for he dropped dead of another heart attack. No one could have been given a grandeur funeral with a great honor showered upon him. In death he was extolled. I know Einstein, he was a man of the utmost fortitude and the widest vision, akin to his lifelong alter ego, Leonardo da Vinci, who suffered deeply in pursuit of knowledge. I recall Einstein saying one day that he was content to be greased for the mill in the immediate present, so that his work might serve generations to come. Today it is true that more students of cinema seek Einstein's films and writings than never sought them during his troubled life. There is an epilogue to the work of Sergei Eisenstein which is directly connected with India. More than 10 years after the banning of his film, Ivan the Terrible, Part 2, K.A. Abbas and Bhagavan Garga were making the Indo-Soviet film Paradesi in the Mos film studio in Moscow. Time and again they asked to see part 2 of Einstein's event film which hardly Arnaud had ever seen. At the end of 5 months, someone suddenly found a copy of the film in the studio and screened it for Abbas and Garga. Their subsequent actions in telling various people about the film appears to have been beginning of chain of events which led to the film being finally released to the world in 1958. It is a unique film, a befitting cross to the creative life of so great an artist as Sergei Mikhailovich Einstein. This is Shajijan from Alpha Omega Visual Media. Dear friends, kindly refer Eisenstein. Thank you very much. Kindly subscribe and share it.